Lisa, shame on you.
All right, so we are back together for our May 18th, 2020 regular council meeting. Council has already called the meeting to order. We had a about 30-minute executive session and a little break in between, and we are now ready to proceed with the meeting. I just want to mention a couple things now that we've started to get more participation with our council meetings, our virtual council meetings. First of all, if you are on the Zoom meeting, remember what you put in the chat is not seen by our viewers that are watching through YouTube. So I would ask that if it's a council member making a comment, that you say that rather than put it in the chat. In general, I think the chat on Zoom would be used if someone's trying to get attention because they want to ask a question or make a comment. Now, on our YouTube chat, if Josue has not already, he is going to add two things on the YouTube chat. First of all is how you signal to us that you want to make a comment or have a question. And we ask that you simply say, please, on our YouTube chat, all right, so we got a little feedback. But again, if you are, you would like this comment to be shared within the council meeting, please write, please share this, read this to council. And if you would like to make that comment or ask that question personally, you can use the Zoom link that Josue has added to the YouTube chat. But we will not just be reading comments like we did at the last meeting. You need to let us know that you want that to be shared in the context of the council meeting, as opposed to just some chatter. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move into the rest of announcements. And I wanted to begin by with a few thank yous, and then I know that several people have announcements. And I might add that we will not be having a town hall component of today's council meeting. Town hall meetings are now every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and those will continue via Zoom and via our YouTube station. So I want to first of all thank, as we're just coming off of National Police Week last week, our peace officer team for just all of their patience, all of their constructive and positive comments to keep people safe. I also want to thank the Miami Township Fire and Rescue for all the work that they've done in collaboration with our police department to help get our local businesses ready to keep customers safe as we move through this reopening. I want to thank the Village team for all the amazing work that they've been doing and really showing how locally minded and results oriented they are. And in particular, you know, we've got public works, streets, parks, all of our utilities and so forth. They have been doing an amazing job and responding in this ever-changing environment we're in. It was really cool to see the impromptu hand sanitizer distribution for our local businesses, seeing the banners go up for the schools and recognizing our 2020 graduates, which I know Josue is going to talk more about. That's just been amazing. I want to thank our first line workers, our folks in the shops, in the grocery stores, in the restaurants that are keeping us healthy, fed, and safe. And I want to thank our residents. I know that these are times where there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of mixed messages. We are listening. We appreciate your patience. We appreciate you being empathetic and thinking about the varying issues that are going on. And I know we'll talk about some of those tonight. So with those thank yous in mind, Josue, do you want to talk a little bit about, I know you've got the school graduate ceremony, as well as talking about the cleanup week?
Yes, I'll talk about the cleanup first. That's an easy one. The week of May 26th, we will host our annual spring cleanup. So please remember, put your items out to the curb during that week, and we'll pick them up. So that's May 26th. Now for graduation. So this year, given circumstances, the high school graduating class will have a special graduation ceremony. This will be a drive-in style graduation ceremony that aligns with the social distancing guidelines. We're happy to be a partner of this. Police department's going to provide escort and assistance for the day of. So here's the brief overview. The special event will begin with an evening parade for the class of 2020. Vehicles will parade through the village. Seniors will parade through downtown beginning up at approximately 8:15 and will end up at the Antioch University Midwest for an 8:45 p.m. graduation ceremony. Yes, that's correct. That's an evening graduation, and it's because there's a screen that will be streamcasting this, and it needs to be a bit dark for the screen to properly work. The clap out parade will travel down West South College Street, Xenia Avenue, Corey Street, and Dayton Street before ending at the Antioch University Midwest. This is a message from the school. We invite the communities to stand on your porch or sit along the route to cheer and honk in celebration of the class 2020. So reminder, the parade will travel down West South College Street, onto Xenia, onto Corey, and then onto Dayton Street to end at the Antioch University Midwest. So if you're able to come out and help celebrate the senior class of 2020, this is certainly a special occasion for them, as it is not the end of something for them. It's really the beginning of their next step, and they are a future, and it's a special one. This is unlike any of us have ever seen. So let's make it the best that we can for a senior class. Thank you.
All right, thanks for those announcements, Josue. And then I did want to highlight with Cleanup Week that we are also promoting people to practice all the physical distancing, wearing masks, all the safety procedures as you are checking out some of those great items that you might want to give a new home or upcycle. So any other announcements? Lisa Krieger, any announcements? Mary Ann McQueen? All right, Kevin Stokes. And how about Laura Curlis? Okay. Few more quick announcements I want to mention. They're still not official, but we think that the election results are probably pretty final from April 28th. And we didn't mention these at our last meeting, but I wanted to highlight that the charter amendment to extend the term of the mayor from 2 years to 4 years did pass quite significantly. The charter amendment to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote did not pass. So it will continue to be that you must be 18 years or older to vote in the Village of Yellow Springs. And the charter amendment to allow non-US citizens who are residents of Yellow Springs did pass. So Judy Kittner will be working with the Board of Elections to get more information on what that procedure is going to look like for November. And we will make sure to have information on our website and otherwise so that anyone that is a resident that would like to participate in local elections will be able to do so. Two other significant items: the proposed increase in sales tax to build a new prison or jail did not pass. So I think that is a good signal for the county to look at the plan again and determine what kinds of things can make this so it's a better fit for Greene County and the overall needs that we have to rehabilitate versus be punitive in the way we look at social justice. And I'm sure Miami Township and the Village of Yellow Springs are happy as residents that the levy renewal for the township also passed. Two other things I wanted to mention is that I was sorry to hear that Sylvia Carter Miller passed recently. I think a lot of us in the village know her. Certainly village government knew Sylvia very well. She always participated in our public conversations, and she will be missed. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that, nope, we already talked about that. So let's go ahead and move into the citizens' concerns component. And I know that Megan Bachman has a question. So Megan, if you want to go ahead and come on.
Thank you. Well, Brian, you read my mind because I was going to ask about election results and council's thoughts and plans for next steps. So I guess what you didn't address was maybe what the possible next steps were for the jail collaboration that was talked about while you were preparing a letter for the issue, and as well as the issue about allowing voting for 16 and 17-year-olds. Is that something that you'll be revisiting, or just your general response?
Yeah, I'll respond to both of those, and then if any other council members have something, just raise your hand. Okay, so starting with vote 16 and 17. So we began with having the 3 issues bundled, separated those issues in the subsequent election. And then we are now looking at, I think if we revisit that issue, it would come to us being something that a group of citizens want to see on the ballot again. So I guess for me personally, while I think it is a great initiative to engage our younger folks at a time when they want to participate in local politics, we basically had it on the ballot twice. So I think that the next step would be something that would be citizen-led. In terms of the failure of the levy, what I think, what I am intending to do, as I mentioned with the letter that we wrote, is follow up to see what is going to be happening as I expect the county will want to bring it back to the ballot. I think there are a lot of other individuals that are much more involved, and I think now they will have more of a voice with the county leaders that are making this decision. But I do personally plan to follow up on that letter that we wrote and some of the suggestions that were made that could make this a more of a solution that would be fitting for all the residents of Greene County. Do any other council members or Josue want to weigh in on Megan's question? Okay.
Well, I would.
Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Okay, so I would first of all almost echo word for word, Brian, everything you said. I think it was very important that we did, several months ago, after the vote 16 and the non-citizen residence issue was bundled, and that wasn't clear what in terms of what our intention was. I suspect that during that first round that it was voted down just because it was clear, or unclear rather, what the intention was, and folks, might have been in favor of one, not the other. And I think the rational thing to do was to vote it down. This time through, I think it is clear. It was absolutely clear what our intention was, and the voters have been clear about what their desires are. So absolutely, I don't think it would be something that we would push, but we would certainly consider, if a citizens group did want to bring that up again. On the jail thing, I think I would expect Greene County to respond to all of the concerns that were raised, by the various citizens groups. I didn't get that involved with it until it was getting close to election time, but there certainly were a lot of options that, as I understand it, the county did not give a full vetting to. And so I would definitely expect for them to go back through and let us know what their process would be moving forward.
I would just like to add, Brian, I echo all the sentiments that you shared, and as being a member of an immigrant family, an immigrant population, I feel very much welcome and embraced that our community has voted to and be inclusive with voices of residents that are not U.S. citizen and are certainly members of this community. On the jail tax, I'm going to reach out to the county to see what we can do to be supportive in their endeavors and towards building a new space that's more conducive to not just what the taxpayers want and what they've clearly voiced, but also what's the right solution for our community. And the right solution, no, it's a mix of things. It's not clear cut, but we certainly know that we need to do more services around recovery and mental health services, and that needs to be at the forefront of the discussion. So we'll engage with those folks and see what we can do. There's certainly not just a Yellow Springs issue. I think Yellow Springs residents were the most vocal, but the people of the county have spoken, and they spoke very loud and clear on this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Josue. I think that an important point that you bring up there is, or I've alluded to, is that it's important that not only is our village manager advocating with, sort of peers in other municipalities in the county, but also that council members are similarly advocating with peers. I think those messages, the more that they are put out there, the more likely we are to get a response. And I'm also really proud that the majority of our citizens recognized the importance of all of our citizens that live in the village. All right, Josue, do we have any other questions or comments from YouTube?
None yet.
Okay, so then I think we can move into the consent agenda, which is the minutes from our last meeting, May 4th. And I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Okay, all right. So we've got a motion from Lisa, a second from Kevin. And all those, well, let's go ahead and do our roll call, Judy. Okay, and you are on mute.
Sorry, Krieger,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Hausch,
Yes?
McQueen,
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have a review of the agenda. So items that we need to change, revise, or add. Anything for the agenda?
Yes. I want to know whether we would want to add a discussion coming out of some of the letters, actually two of which you submitted regarding eviction and the ordinance, the pay and stay ordinance.
Yeah, that would be great.
Sense to have discussion of that on the agenda.
Yes, so, and I would propose that we add that under legislation, partly because we do have a draft resolution that we can discuss. And we also have a lawyer from Able Law Firm that will be able to answer questions. So that's a great addition. Anything else?
Yes, we do have an emergency reading for an ordinance number 2020-06, which is amending pool rates.
Okay, great. So we'll add that as well. And this is being brought as an emergency because we are trying to rapidly respond to how we get the pool open. Some of you may know that guidelines just came out for pools recently by the state. Okay, anything else related to the agenda? All right, then Marianne, if you would guide us through petitions and communication.
Yes, a number of the petitions and communications were at our, well, our literal desk, figurative desk, I guess, last week. So I'll list the names of the people, but they were all regarding reopening. So that was Marsha Walgren, Anthony Berry, Kate Hamilton, Danielle Mershon, Jamie Sharp, Stuart Leeds, Matthew Carson, Moira Laughlin, Don and Christine Beard, Kim Lemkow, Kate Mooneyham, Mark Heiss, and Nancy Mellon. Then the new communications, there are 4 regarding tenant rights and eviction issues. One from the Housing Stability Task Force from Emily Seibel with a sample letter that is recommended that we send to Xenia Municipal Court. Brian, you submitted a sample ordinance for pay and stay. You also submitted the Ohio eviction guidelines so that people understand what is not legal in terms of a landlord attempting to evict a tenant. And there was one from Able Law. I can't, let's see. Also regarding pay and stay. Karen Wintrow submitted communications about the mask on signage and Yellow Springs branding. And if you've been downtown, you can see that on a lot of the stores. The state of Ohio submitted information about when different kind of entities will be reopening. Amy Walmsley regrettably submitted a cancellation of the June Pride celebration. Elise Burns submitted the mayor's court statistics, and Ruth Ann submitted the information about the blood drive, which will happen at the Bryant Center parking lot on June 18th. I believe that's right. Yes, June 18th from 2 to 6 p.m. That's it.
All right. I appreciate that, Mary Ann. And I also see that Deborah has joined us. Deborah, thanks a lot for being able to make it for this part of the meeting. So we're going to move into public hearings and legislation, and we've added 2 items. I'd like to begin with the pay and stay resolution. And Deborah, since we have you here, do you mind just kind of introducing this to council and villagers, and then we can see if there are any questions?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yep, we're good.
Good. So I live in the country, and sometimes the string and the cans don't quite stay up, and so internet isn't always the best. So let me know if something happens that you're not able to hear me. So thank you, first of all, for asking me to be with you this evening on this Monday, rainy Monday day. It makes me think of the Carpenters. So I wanted to talk with you for a brief moment about sort of the current crisis that we're in for tenants in Ohio. So
Can I interrupt you for just a moment so that folks know, because I think council knows, but I don't know that our viewers do know. If you could let folks know your background and why you're speaking to the legislation, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you for stopping me before I jumped right in. So my name is Deborah Levy. I'm an attorney with Advocates for Basic Legal Equality. This is my 21st year with Legal Aid. We are a nonprofit law firm. We serve low-income individuals in civil matters, and my primary 2 focuses of law are landlord-tenant law, and then also public benefits as well. And I'm here in my capacity as a housing lawyer to talk to you about some proposed changes in the law. Okay, so prior to the pandemic hitting, Ohio had already been experiencing a crisis regarding tenants. So we'd been in an eviction crisis where we were seeing lots of tenants being evicted and displaced, and many tenants were struggling to pay their rent. That's one of the reasons we were seeing this high levels of eviction. In Ohio, if a tenant gets behind in their rent, the normal practice is the landlord would issue a notice to the tenant asking them to leave the premises. And if they don't leave the premises, the landlord would then file an eviction action. In Ohio, it's called a complaint enforceable entry and detainer. Under Ohio law, the tenant does not have the right to pay the rent that they owe to be able to stay at the property. And so that is really concerning as we see many more tenants who are behind in their rent since the pandemic hit. And that there are many agencies that are trying to fill the gaps to help tenants stay where they're at. There was an article in yesterday's Dayton Daily News highlighting the work of the Community Action Partnership Agency that serves Montgomery and Greene and Darke and Preble counties. And they anticipate receiving a significant chunk of money from the federal government through the states to help people stay in their homes. But our concern is that rental assistance alone is not enough, because even if tenants have access to rental assistance, and that's a big if, because there are many more tenants that need rental assistance than there is rental assistance available, the landlords have to agree to take the rent money in the cases where the rent is late. So pay to stay fills that gap. We see a pay to stay and rental assistance as twins. I have twin daughters. We see them as twins that go together, that help fill the gap, help keep people where they're at during this public health crisis.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for that, Deb. And are there any questions from council members? Okay. Chris Connor, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you, Deb. Thanks for your presentation. I just have a quick question. As I understand the ordinance, there are two parts to it. Under current Ohio law, a residential landlord is not required to accept past due rent or late payments. However, if the landlord does accept the payments, then that has the effect of continuing the lease interest that the tenant has. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so what this ordinance really does is it says, with the help of these publicly funded, these resources, I'll say they're public resources that are either government funds or private funds that would then help that tenant have to give them the money that would bring them current with the rent. Is that how the model works?
So under pay to stay, it could be an agency that assists in paying the rent. It could be the tenant that comes up with the rent money, or a family member. It wouldn't matter who assists, but just the fact that the tenant's able to come up with all that it's due and owing, the landlord has to accept that if the tenant offers it. I think the proposed ordinance we sent you had 3 different stages. So one is paying after the notice. At that stage, the tenant would pay the rent that's owed plus any reasonable late fees. If it was after the filing of an eviction complaint but prior to judgment, the tenant would pay the reasonable late fees, the rent, and the court costs. And then after judgment but prior to execution, prior to move out, it would be the same court costs and late fees and the back rent.
And has ABLE worked with the courts and the jurisdictions where pay to play has been discussed, and what reception have you received from the various courts and the jurisdictions?
Yeah, so there is no city, no municipality in Ohio that has passed pay to stay yet. So Yellow Springs would be the first. So there are no courts that have litigate. There's no courts that have dealt with this issue because it's not law in any of our municipalities in Ohio.
So have you done any research to determine if in a city or a village like Yellow Springs, which is actually a tied to Xenia Municipal Court, although on the criminal side, almost no ordinance criminal violations are prosecuted in Xenia. They're typically handled through mayor's court. I have concerns of whether or not we can compel the Xenia Municipal Court to honor the village's ordinance on pay to stay.
Right. So, I mean, how it would work is that if a tenant lives within the jurisdiction of, within the limits of Yellow Springs, and the case is filed in Xenia Municipal Court, the law for Yellow Springs would apply, is how we would view it. And the court would be obliged to follow that law.
In the sense that if the landlord would not voluntarily dismiss the eviction action, then the payment of the funds in the ordinance would become the affirmative defense to prevent the forcible eviction and detainer.
Yes, that's correct. So how the model ordinance was drafted is if a tenant had tendered what is owed to the landlord and the landlord refuses it, and the landlord subsequently files an eviction action, the tenant can raise their tender as an affirmative defense to the underlying eviction action.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, thank you, Chris. So Deb, related to Chris asking about other municipalities, I know that at least one other municipality is looking at pay and stay. Are there others, or?
Yeah, so many of the big cities are looking at this as an option. I call them the big seven. So, you know, Cincinnati and Columbus, Dayton, Toledo, Youngstown, Akron. So there are other cities that are looking at it. At this point, no other cities have had, you know, brought it to council, but there are some discussions going on. Because there's a real concern, as I mentioned earlier, that without pay to stay, with just rental assistance, that many tenants will still end up homeless.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I want to emphasize one other point, and then Deborah, correct me if I'm saying anything incorrectly. But, you know, my understanding is that if the reason for eviction is failure to pay, that this basically does not put the landlord at a disadvantage to collect the rent, because pay and stay means that you have to pay whatever those expenses are in order to stay. So, so my feeling about this particular legislation is that it preserves that balance that I know we might be concerned about with both landlords and tenants. So is there anything I'm missing on that, Deb, or is that?
No, that's correct. So the way the model ordinance was drafted is that the tenant would effectively make the landlord whole by paying, you know, the back rent. There is a provision for what is a reasonable late fee, you know, reasonable late fees, and then costs once we get to if you would get to the court stage. I would have clarified that this law would not give the tenant like a longer tenancy. I mean, yes, they would get current, but this wouldn't prevent a landlord from non-renewing a tenancy if you have a tenant that's on a month-to-month tenancy, meaning their tenancy renews every month with the payment of rent. So, you know, at some point a landlord could non-renew a tenancy, but this is only in the context of a non-payment of rent case. So if a landlord would give a tenant for not paying their rent, the tenant would have the ability to pay, the tenant would have the opportunity to be able to pay the rent and stay even if it's late.
Okay. So I guess, are there any other questions that have come up before we discuss a bit? Marianne?
How would this situation be handled if a tenant, I'm going to say, took advantage of this situation and got into a habit of continually not paying their rent And then at the last minute, after a couple months or whatever it is that you can start filing eviction notice, then they pay up. Is there some way to address that sort of situation?
So the way that the ordinance is written, it does not address that situation. I should tell you that even without the ordinance, if the landlord has a pattern and practice of accepting rent late from a tenant, that would be a defense to an underlying eviction. So if that had happened multiple times and then the tenant had tendered the rent late and practiced with the allowance by the landlord couldn't refuse that without sending the tenant some notice that they were stopping that. So I just want to clarify that already exists. The difference is, this allows the tenant to be able to do that at a stage like when the case is filed, when an eviction action is filed.
But in that case, the landlord, again, it's like you said, it's already law. The landlord still does have at the end of whatever the term is, the right to non-renew, whether it's annual or monthly or whatever.
That's correct. So again, I just want to clarify, we're only talking about a non-payment of rent case. So if a landlord's evicting for other reasons, non-renewal was the most benign. I just don't want to rent to you anymore, so I'm non-renewing you. But for health and safety, for criminal activity, for other breach of lease, they can still pursue that. This law would not affect their ability to do that. The pay to stay is merely a law that says that if a tenant's behind in rent and they're able to pay all that's due and owing to the landlord, that they're able to stay, because the idea is that neither party is out anything. The landlord's being made whole, and the tenant's paying what needs to be paid.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Chris.
I think the two other points I'd like to make is that, Deborah, to confirm what I read in the ordinance, the proposed ordinance is that the duration of the pay to stay would only last as long as that local emergency or statewide emergency exists. So it's not intended to be a permanent ordinance. Is that right?
So I think that's up to the village council. I think cities are more inclined to consider this law in the context of an emergency and trying to deal with that right now. We believe that it's a law that could be in place, after the emergency, but surely we understand that might be where cities land.
And then the second thing is to clarify, because I don't think it's been mentioned at all, this ordinance would only apply to residential tenants. It has no bearing or impact on any commercial tenancy. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, this would only apply to residential tenants.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, Lisa Krieger.
Yeah, a clarifying question. So as it is right now, is the law, what is the impact on business renters right now? What's the current state?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I could answer, but I don't represent commercial tenants. I only do residential. So if that's what you're asking, I'm not able to answer that.
Okay. Chris?
You.
I think that the general advice that commercial tenants are getting, and I think this is true for residential tenants as well, tenants are far better off trying to reach out to their landlords because of whatever financial situation they're in. The same is true for landlords. I mean, if they have concerns about their tenants, they ought to be talking to one another. I think that if a tenant was a good tenant, but for the COVID situation, I would think that it would be a bad business decision for someone to lose an otherwise reliable and honest and trustworthy tenant in the property. So I think some of it has to do with just the common sense approach of not approaching it from necessarily fear, although I understand why, but working with someone. And I think that most people will work with others. Deborah, I don't know if that's what you're seeing or not.
Yeah, I think that's right. Through this pandemic, there's been so much misinformation. I mean, Ohio Ohio was one of few states that did not issue a statewide moratorium on evictions. Yet there are over 250 courts in Ohio that hear evictions, all taking various actions about how they're going to proceed with eviction cases. Through all of that, many residential tenants thought that they didn't have to pay their rent during this time. And so there's never been nothing has changed. Like, tenants still have to pay their rent. While there's the CARES Act that President Trump signed at the end of March, giving a 120-day eviction moratorium for folks that are residing in certain subsidized properties. That's only 1 in 4 properties nationwide, and that is still not a rent forgiveness. That's just a delay in filing the eviction. So we're always encouraging our tenants to pay if they can, and if they can't, then they should reach out to their landlord and have a conversation with their landlord and see what they can work out, because that's always the best for everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. So I guess the next piece of this conversation would be what are council's thoughts around providing some kind of, I guess, support to tenants like this. Laura, what are you thinking?
I would be in favor of it for the time of the emergency, state of emergency, or 1 year, whichever is sooner. I think we can relook at it in a year. I mean, the emergency could go on much longer. We don't know. And just a small point, there's a typo in paragraph 2 on page 2 that you'll want to correct. In any event, that's the only thing I would add to it is some sort of time limitation.
Okay. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I'm in favor of the sample legislation or something like that. And I was thinking it would be maybe good to make it permanent.
Okay. Okay. Mary Ann McQueen? There you go.
I support it and suggest that we do whatever needs to be done to bring it back as an ordinance or resolution. I don't know which makes sense. I also think we might want to do it for a time period or revisit it at the beginning of next year.
Okay. Lisa?
I also support it, and I feel like I'm always learning things from being on council, but I just think it's ridiculous that you can't keep someone whole and still maintain your tenant rights. So I'm in favor, and I would also think we should revisit it, and I would also like to include our commercial properties.
Okay. So I think we're on the same page. I had also thought about adding commercial, and I think it seems like we could put in the wording for revisiting after maybe a 1 year period. So Judy, question for you: what if we wanted to take action now? I mean, can we bring this in as a resolution and number it? And
I don't think that you can, because you need to have the force of law if it's going to go to Xenia Municipal Court. I mean, I maybe double check that with Chris, but my sense is you need it to be an ordinance and could bring it as an emergency, one read, one and done on June 1st. But I think you've got enough slight difference of opinion on what should and shouldn't be in the ordinance that you should probably take that time to craft it.
Okay. Yeah, I think the main thing is obviously the sooner we can act on this, the better. And so, all right, well, I think unless anyone has a different thought or idea, then it sounds like we would bring this to the June 1st meeting. And I would like to bring it as an emergency. Any other thoughts about that piece of this discussion? Okay. So this kind of ties into the other piece, which is related to the letter that we got from, Emily sent it, the sample letter, And this came out of the housing insecurity group that's part of the leadership team that's been working on these issues. So I think that, I wanted to kind of differentiate where I think putting a moratorium on evictions potentially has a different impact, where, and Lisa's brought this up before, thinking about the landlord side as well as the tenant side. But I think one thing that's important to highlight is what Deborah talked about related to the community action project that is expecting a substantial amount of money soon. I've heard possibly around 4 million, but that hasn't been confirmed. We also know that there have been delays in stimulus checks and in PPP and some of these other things. So I think part of the idea is that people may, or hopefully will be in a position to pay in a month or two, or in a different position than they are right now. So we've been asked to draft a letter. I would think that if we're going to send a letter, that is something ideally we'd make a decision about now, but maybe that's also something we have to talk further. One thing we do know is that the municipal court that hears our eviction cases in Xenia has started hearing cases again. They had, the court had been closed for a while due to some of the guidelines, but Ellis Jacobs checked, and we know that there were some cases heard on Friday, some cases heard today, and some cases scheduled for June 1st. So that's kind of the background we have, and I guess I'd be curious to hear thoughts about whether we should also take action to write a letter about how Yellow Springs feels to the municipal court. So thoughts on a letter advocating for a moratorium, or an extended moratorium, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I would support doing that. And I think that the sample letter is certainly a good start. I don't have anything particular to add to it.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I would limit it to non-payment, the moratorium for non-payment cases. There are cases where other things are happening that are unrelated to COVID.
Okay. Lisa, anything else to weigh in on?
No, I would agree with both of the preceding comments. Thank you.
Thanks. Kevin?
I'm in agreement with what's been said already. Thanks.
Okay. So the other thing I think we should add to the letter is that emphasis on, and this was in the Able Law letter, around what I just articulated, money that we are hoping is going to come to folks that's going to provide relief. So it sounds like there's consensus around writing a letter or sending a letter. Some of you may remember that Ron Lewis spoke to us last year about, well, it was in his role as prosecutor. Now he is one of the judges at the municipal court. So I think we've got a friendly ear there. He seemed very open when he spoke to us. So I think putting our intent out makes sense, and we can update that letter based on these parameters and send it out tomorrow. Okay, so any other thoughts around eviction and housing insecurity relief? Okay, I appreciate the discussion. Deborah, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some background. And we will move forward accordingly. And this kind of highlights again, the village is in rapid response mode. We're going to be thoughtful and balanced about our decisions, but if we can take action to help people sooner rather than later, we will. Okay. So if nothing else, we're going to move to ordinance 20, or yeah, this is ordinance 2020-06. Judy, let's go ahead and read that in by title only.
This is repealing and replacing section 1064.02, rates, admissions, and season hours of chapter 1064, municipal swimming pool of part 10, streets, utilities, and public services of the codified ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so I heard Laura on the motion and Kevin on the second.
Okay.
You were close, Lisa. And Josue, do you want to talk about this ordinance?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Before I get started, Judy asked me to remind you on whether we vote on this as an emergency now to allow for proper notice to residents, or we could wait until June 1st, but then we don't have the timeline for noticing of residents for when pool opens. This is the one time where I wish legislation will come in after some of my presentations, because you would hear from me in a later presentation on the proposal of reopening the pools. So I'll introduce some of that concept here because it's important context for what the ordinance that's before you. As you know, we have the pools. We were just recently, last week, Governor DeWine issued an order that would allow public pools or pools to open beginning May 2026. That's a very short timetable for many of the pool operators to come up with a new plan to operate pools under what are very strict guidelines and recommendations by the Center for Disease Control and other public health authorities. With those restrictions and a new way of doing businesses for the pools, we've determined that the traditional way of doing pool operations in the village is not conducive under the current business dynamic. Particularly, the season pass business model is not conducive, and there's several reasons why. But one of them primarily has to do around the reduced occupancy for pools to reduce the density of people meeting. Two, we have to implement a rotating shift that would allow for proper cleaning and sanitation of the facilities to create a safer environment for pool participants to be able to enjoy the pool in a safer manner. Now, there is no such thing as safe because you can't control everything, but what can we do is make it safer by having these rotating shifts where customers come in for 2 hours at a time, then at 2-hour intervals, everyone leaves the facility for a full clean down of the facility so that the next wave of participants can come into the pool and enjoy the pool in a cleaner environment than the group that had just previously left. So the economics here, the annual season pass is not a good model because we cannot guarantee admission to any participant. They may have an annual pass, but they may come to a pool and we are over capacity and they may not be allowed in, or they have to leave and not come in for the second shift. So the old season pass model worked well when we did not have such strict requirements and participants could enjoy the pool essentially the entire day. Those things are not feasible under the current conditions. So we're asking council, making recommendation to council to change the way that we operate the pools, primarily around the fees. So we're proposing to do away with the annual passes and institute a admission rate per 2-hour session. Our current rates, the ones that we're asking you to remove, currently has daily admission rates of $4 for children and $7 for adults. We're asking council to adjust the ordinance and adopt this ordinance where it sets the fees at $3 per child and $5 for adults. The free admission for children 3 and under still remains in place. That's the brief summary of what we're proposing in terms of rates.
All right, thank you, Josue. Okay, let's, I guess, start with thoughts, comments, questions from council. Kevin.
Yeah, I think it seems like an appropriate adjustment. So I do want to ask about the annual passes. I mean, this might be sort of a silly question. I mean, do folks just buy 1-year passes? So for this year, there are no existing annual passes?
That's correct, Kevin. There will be no annual passes. So the way the model will work is folks pay at the window, the $3 for children or $5 for adults, or they can prepay in advance and buy booklets of coupons. So the booklets and coupons are for those individuals who may not carry cash. So the families could prepay the coupons, and then the participants just come to the window, turn over a coupon, and that's their admission. And that's also a strategy for us to reduce the cash transaction. As you know, cash is one of the culprits and transmitting droplets. And so we also want to explore strategies to reduce the direct contact.
And also with the late opening or late-ish, a little bit later opening, you're gonna make any adjustments on the shutdown time when you close the pool?
Yes, and later in my presentation, one of the proposals is that we would keep the pool open until school returns to session, which we anticipate being August 23rd. There's still talk about whether schools will resume. So if that date moves, then say the school does not go back into session August 23rd, we propose to extend the pool opening into Labor Day, which is the traditional date of closing the pool. One of the reasons we wanna attach or have our closing date align with the school reopening is that once school is in session, our attendance to the pool significantly drops, but our expenses don't. We still have to treat the pool with chlorine, we still have to run the pumps, the filtration system, and we still have to staff it. So we would want to reduce our costs as much as we can by closing earlier.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Laura Curlis.
Do you anticipate having to limit pass sales to village residents and Miami Township residents and their guests?
That's one of the questions that the council needs to wait on. I've heard significant feedback from residents that they would like to see the pool be for only Yellow Springs resident. I think in a few virtual town halls ago, the question was asked directly. We were unsure about the legality of it. It turns out that we can make the pool for residents only. It's a matter of this is what the council and our residents really want. So that addresses the overall resident versus township question, but I think it's much broader than that. There are folks from outside the township that would be interested as well.
Yeah, because we're the only public pool in Greene County, we get groups from, far and wide, really, in the county that come.
Right, we get camps from outside of the area that come. We address the camps specifically. We would not make reservations for camp groups or any groups as we have in the past. This would be a first come, first serve. We looked into the possibility of doing an online reservation system. We don't have the dedicated broadband at the pool, and we just don't have that infrastructure built in place to be able to ramp it up by June 5th when we would like to open the pool.
Lisa?
So I just want to say first, thank you, Josue, for your creative ideas on this. I know that all along we've been waiting for guidance from the health department. And I think everyone knows that that's where I tend to follow their guidance. And so I think what you're proposing is prudent in light of that guidance, and also creates an environment where we can provide this really important facility that supports mental health and, physical activity and safe interaction. I think it's really important that we start to figure out how we're opening up and in what ways and how we can do it safely. And I'm really thinking about the youth of Yellow Springs and the township and the surrounding areas who are suffering so much during this period of acute isolation. So thank you for that. I also really want to acknowledge that this has village team implications because it's a lot of work and there's a lot of work in preparing the pool area and getting it ready to open. I know there's budget implications. So I also want to thank the extended village team, and with a message that says, this is an important thing to do. This is an important thing to do. I do not think that we should limit it to village residents or even the township. I think that we should remain open in that account. And I do think that it's just very important to manage, as you said, Josue, the number of people that are there and the cleaning protocols. And that's going to be, I think, the most important thing for us to monitor. And then to figure out from a financial perspective, like how long can we keep this open, until school starts or it snows, So then it can be an ice skating rink. But anyway, I think that we'll have to navigate that. So thank you. And I am in favor of moving forward with this.
Thank you, Lisa.
Wow. Remember that ice skating rink idea. Mary Ann?
Thanks, Josue. I appreciate, as well as Lisa and everyone else has said, the work that you and the team members have done to figure out how to do this responsibly. And I'm comfortable with the price for the different age groups. I do think we should limit to Yellow Springs residents. I know that that's sort of harsh, but it's a financially losing proposition for the village government. And it seems to me that it's one of the perks that we can give our residents, first of all. Secondly, by limiting it to village residents, I think we would cut down on the number of people coming into the pool, which would make it safer, and safer because the people coming into the pool were just coming from this place. So for those, I guess, 3 reasons, I would support limiting it to just village residents.
All right, thanks, Mary Ann. I want to, I guess, ask a couple questions or mention a couple things, and then I expect that Megan may have a question or comment, and maybe some others as well. Okay, so the first thing is, Josue, I think it's probably relevant to our decision for you to describe what the cleaning plan is going to look like.
Yes, I feel fortunate to have Samantha Stewart on the team. She's really has dug immersed herself on the protocol, and she looked at the recommendations from CDC. Brian, the things that you forward from Swim Safe and the outdoor committees. So she's done her research there, but she's taken a step further. Everything is going to get sprayed down and wiped down. So as those folks come out, there would be cleaning of the entire facility. She's gone a bit further. She's asked for additional staffing, 1 person that would be dedicated to cleaning throughout the entire time that folks are there. So we're taking out most of the furniture. We will leave the tables in place because the tables anchor the umbrellas, and that creates shade in the pool. And that's one of the challenges we have in the pool, is that we don't have shady areas. So we'll keep the tables there, and this one individual will be responsible for making sure that those tables are clean every 30 minutes or so, and then a full wipe down at every 2-hour intervals. That's
So
for the facility. Now for snacks, we're going to simplify snacks. We'll still have snacks, but they will only be prepackaged snacks, and she will have a regimen of cleaning the supplies as they come in, so to minimize the transfer of any cross contaminants or contact. Johnny and the team are working on strategies and solutions to create plexiglass on the different counters. So, we have a window. They're working on ensuring that that's properly operating, and they'll create an additional area where it'll be covered with a plexiglass or a type of plastic to create as a shield. The fire department will be providing us with face shields as an additional protective measure for the team. So we're doing all these things to ensure that our employees are safe, or as safe as they can be in this environment, and the clients, customers will also have a safer environment. Johnny's also looking into the possibility of creating an additional exit point. So people come in through one area of the pool and are able to exit through another way, so that as you're having turnover, not everyone's coming in through that same entry point. Colin and Brian Carlson will be working on markings on the exterior of the property. Also, I should mention that Fire Chief Colin Altman already reviewed our space and determined the operating capacity of the pool. And that capacity is determined at 120 individual. And so we're able to accommodate for that number of individuals, and we will properly do the markings on the facility. So for example, the diving board, folks are used to being right up close to each other on the diving board and get in line. Well, that's not going to be possible anymore. We're going to have markings leading up to the diving board, so folks queue up to dive into the pool from the diving board. So that's an example of the measures we're taking to ensure a safer swim experience. I forgot to mention the Swim All program. We would honor the spirit of the Swim for All program. So we will continue to evaluate those families in needs and providing a discount of this rate.
So Josue, have we estimated what that total clean time is going to be after each 2-hour session?
Yes, we have a schedule, and that limits it to 30 minutes of up to 30 minutes for cleaning. So we've looked into that. Again, I'm honored and I feel privileged to have Samantha Stewart leading this team, as she figured all of this out and put a lot of time and effort into it.
Right.
And
yeah.
she's written out a protocol that I'm happy to share with council. We worked on it today to review some of the finer details, and we've got a little more work to do. So for example, the coupons, we're figuring out the coupons and a few other things, but we've got a really good protocol and draft form now, and we hope to finalize it by the end of the week.
And would the plan be, if you leave a 2-hour session and you want to stay, do you come out and sort of get in the back of a line or something, or?
Yes, and you pay your fee again.
Right.
Yes, so you could come back in. Again, it's first come, first serve.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And is there no way for us to do online payments? As you had talked about, I mean, I would imagine coupons kind of share the same issues as cash. They're paper.
But it's one way, and you don't have to directly touch it. So if someone has a coupon, you put it on the counter, view it, slide it into the slot, but there's no cash or being returned. There's no.
So we could just have them
returned.
drop it in.
Exactly. Okay. There's no something going back to the customer.
Gotcha. But you think just online is going to be too difficult to manage?
Online, I discussed it with the team. It's a heavy lift right now. We're not closing the door completely on it, but right now we have to make sure that all of the equipment is ready to go, and then we have the proper training for the staff, and we're working through some of these other critical items in the chain to get this work done.
Okay, thanks. So I guess, part of the reason why, I asked some of those questions just to share my own thoughts is, if we were able to have a reservation system, then, I think that would make me feel more comfortable about this issue of, Yellow Springs Township residents versus others. My impression is that the capacity of the pool doesn't typically reach even 125. And others have kind of mentioned that as well when I've talked to them about capacities. But I feel like sort of that system that we're looking at could have some relevance on the ultimate decision that we make. Okay.
And one of the things I would add to that, Brian, this is where I appreciate a language that Chris Kennard provided to include in a section in the ordinance that would allow the administration to be flexible to respond to business and recommendations by the governor or public health authorities. So we may be looking at an option where We could ramp up technology-wise to make a reservation portal or system in place, but that could also come at the recommendation of the Public Health Authority, as we've seen it in other businesses where recommendations are highly encouraged, and they may become recommended as if situation changes.
Okay. So we are reading this as an emergency, so I'm going to officially open the public hearing and see if we have any questions or comments from citizens. So Josue, Philip, Judy, anything on YouTube?
Yes, there are a few things on YouTube. Brian, they didn't come with a disclaimer for council or question or comment. So I posted that. We could state that again, or we can read what we think is what's relevant.
If you think there's something that is really important for council to hear, that, you know, but again, it would be better if people are identifying that they want those comments read.
Okay, I think that there's 2 comments that have come in. Yep, they want our comments to be read.
Okay.
I'm sorry, they want their comments to be read. So first one, Matthew Kirk, a resident. I think limiting the pool to village and township residents is the prudent thing to do. It has the built-in effect of limiting numbers. We can always choose to expand attendance, but hard to take it away. Susan Carr, do any other jurisdictions contribute to the pool or have grants provide support? If so, what are the requirements, if any? We currently, I don't know if you want me to answer these as we go along.
Yeah, well, I think the first one is a perspective, which is good. And if you have an answer to the second question, sure.
We currently don't have grants directly provided to us for the pool purposes. However, we have groups that are supportive of the pool and they come every year, such as the camp and certain organizations that buy passes for residents in their community or clients of their organization. But that's, you know, they pay the user fee and on behalf of those customers.
Okay, any other questions or comments about this emergency ordinance?
There's 2 more. There's Matthew Kirk again. I support the staff recommendation to not use an electronic system. Keep it simple. Keep the simple, stupid solution, not simple. No space in between those 2 words.
Okay. Yeah, I will say, you know, one of the reasons why reservation systems are mentioned as a best practice by the governor and the Outdoor Recreation Task Force is that when people, you know, load up their group, their family to come, and then they find out the pool is at capacity. But I tend to agree that this is something that we can start and see what the issues might be and refine as we go. So I like the prioritization of getting the pool open when it's safe to do so.
Can I make just a comment?
Yes.
About the reservation system, my hesitation there is just that I think it disadvantages kids who may not have a lot of means, who are going to hop on their bike and try to go swim at the pool. They just don't have the capacity to make that reservation. That's one concern I would have. And the other is, not to confuse things further, but I think the option might be there to limit the pool to village residents, perhaps at certain times or on certain days, as maybe a hybrid offering. If folks are very concerned about a lot of folks from out of town using their same space, that they don't have to worry about that, for example, on a Friday or a Saturday. I'm just throwing that as an example. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Judy.
I'd like to just follow up with that suggestion, because that probably does the thing about opening up wider, perhaps on some days. That speaks to a question that I was going to ask. When earlier in the conversation, when we asked about how we get a lot of Greene County folks outside the village or township, but still within Greene County, but part of that response was that we get a lot of groups. So if you pull the groups out of, you know, the greater Greene County area, I'm wondering what does that leave you with? I mean, are there a lot of individuals coming from, the greater county area, or is it just the groups? And then, but of course, Judy's suggestion to consider alternating, I think that's certainly noteworthy as well.
Okay. Laura, did you want to add something? I see you're off mute. Okay.
I have some numbers just to shed some light on Kevin's question. Last year, of the daily admissions rate, we were looking at 652 versus 2,874 non-resident daily admissions. Obviously, the pool passes are sold primarily to residents versus the annual passes are primarily a residents service, and I can get you that number. I thought I had it in front of me, but those were the daily admissions rate. And that number was specifically asked by council as we were considering a new pool rates for 2020.
And that was, I remember we talked about that 80% residents, 20% outside of Yellow Springs. But I don't believe we distinguished township or, that sort of thing there. So, so it's 20%, but we know that includes township and other bordering neighborhoods. Okay, any other questions or comments? Lisa.
I like the hybrid idea. I like the idea that in some days and times there would be broader access, and on other days it would be village and township. Thank you, Judy, for that idea.
Okay. All right. Philip seems to have something. I'll put on my mask for this handoff.
We have a question from Summer McGuire. Do you want me to read it or will you read it?
You can go ahead, Josue.
Please read to council. The city of Kettering, which has closed their water park for the season to be more protective of their community's health, has a residents only day on Sundays.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So anything else? All right. It sounds like that there's some suggested amendments to this legislation. So I am going to close the public hearing and then open to any suggested amendments to this ordinance.
Chris.
No, go ahead, Laura. I'll wait.
Well, I was going to make a motion to amend the ordinance to limit pool access to residents on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and otherwise not make it as it was, first come, first serve.
Okay, can I get a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. And Judy, can I take other motions before we look at the final thing?
That's a great question.
I believe the answer is yes, because we could just deal with whatever these proposed changes are as part of one process once they get motioned and seconded. I have two recommendations, not substantive. One is in the first whereas clause, where it reads in the second line, pandemic and requires new operational procedures as directed by Governor DeWine. I would put comma, the Ohio Department of Health and recommended by CDC. So add Ohio Department of Health, because not all of these guidances are coming solely from the governor's office. And then I would also recommend number 5. Judy, I already emailed this proposal to you, so you have it. But section 5, and then you would change sections 5 to 6, section 6 to 7, etc. But it would read, the village manager is further authorized to implement and modify pool rules and policies as needed based upon guidance and recommendations of the governor and the Ohio Director of Health.
Okay. Can I get a motion for those suggestions?
I move
I
A
second.
second.
Okay, so I heard Lisa motion and I think Mary Ann just beat out Kevin for second.
I'll let you have it this time.
Okay, any other,
Brian, I have a question. I get the intent about limiting the 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for residents only, but I have to ask, we have residents that may have a visitor with them. What's flexibility can we have in that regard? Chris, I see Chris raised his hand.
I would suggest that pursuant to the authority-making power that the manager has, is that you put together a guest policy that would allow a village resident to bring 1 or 2 guests or some number, however you want to see fit. Recognizing that whatever the policies are, there's just going to be problems because there's limitations on a number of people. It is what it is. And I think that you're also going to find as you begin your operations, you're going to be tinkering with how the process works. So for example, if the pool opens at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're creating these 2-hour sessions, does somebody have to leave? Can they come back? How all of that operates? So I can envision a situation where, as Judy said, the 11-year-old kid gets on his bike and pedals over to the pool and finds out he can't get in right away, but he could be given that pass or be on the sign-up sheet that he could come into the pool at 1 o'clock. Again, you're going to have to work out the devil in the details, but I think that's manageable.
Yeah, and that just managing expectations, we can certainly do that, and we will need to have some flexibility with that limitation.
okay, so it sounds like we don't need to modify the ordinance because that's already covered by that recommendation.
That's correct. And I would say that the distinction I make is that if there's going to be a limitation on certain days and times to village-only residents, I think that that's appropriately reflected as the will of the council in the legislation, not the policy of the manager.
Right. Okay, any other amendments to the ordinance?
I'm sorry. So just to clarify, Chris, you are saying that if in fact council adopts the limiting to residents Friday through Sunday, that's added as a section.
Yes, I hadn't thought about that. When I proposed my new section 5, that would have bumped everybody down. I would suggest that you create a new section that would go between the manager's authorized to a swimming for all program, and then where village resident is defined, put in above the definition of village resident, that section.
Okay. Yeah, and I think just to summarize what I'm hearing Chris say is that by putting in this clause to allow for some flexibility with our village manager and the team, they'll be able to make those tweaks and refinements. Council doesn't need to micromanage every piece of this, right? Obviously, if we hear any issues, then we can, talk about that. But otherwise, we're handing over that supervision to the team.
Can I just make a clarification though, because I think it may come up as to whether it's the will of council that if you should pass Laura's amendment that it's villagers only Friday through Sunday, and there are 4 people in that pool on Saturday and 5 people show up from out of town, they are not permitted entry to the pool. That is not part of the latitude of the pool management staff. Because the amendment that I hear Laura making is pretty categorical. It's residents only, and then we come up with a specific guest policy.
Right, but the guest policy would be able to fit under that, like residents here could mean that they can bring guests.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate the spirit, but I'm wondering from the business perspective in the example that Judy just presented, what if we have a very low number of residents at the pool? And we have out of town pool customers. It's just something to consider, that we would be underutilizing the pool occupancy. I think that, I don't know, I'm wondering if we can have some flexibility, whether on busy days we'll prioritize residents only and particularly on the weekends. I'm wondering if there's just a middle ground there, how do we can make it fit, make it work.
Well, one thing that you mentioned, Josue, that, I wonder is, if we get started and then we see changes that need to be made, I guess we could update the ordinance if we need to. But I think one way or the other, we could respond to those changes. So I guess the question is, where do we want to start?
You got two hands up, Brian.
Well, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
Well, I do like, the whole middle ground approach. I think if we modify what Laura has suggested in terms of the previous amendments, we just talk about prioritizing residents, as opposed to being exclusive. And then that way, I think it does give the folks on site the latitude to say, hey, I only got 2 people in there, but I got 6 out-of-towners, if you will, wanting to get in. And the fact that you're prioritizing residents as opposed to being exclusive, I think that gives you some latitude to still allow the pool to reach capacity, if that's a concern.
Okay. And Chris, did you want to say something as well?
I just want to reemphasize that the reason for this language that allows the manager to create a policy, it's designed for flexibility. The spirit of the village and the spirit of this ordinance is to try and create opportunities for as many people as possible. And I think that staff will figure out a way to manage all of that in a satisfactory way that won't require the need to come back to council.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Are you still taking statements or comments?
If they would like them, sure. If they have asked for them to, be read to council.
One of them was very explicit, again, from, actually there's 2. Matthew Kurt, if you don't have enough residents to justify the pool being open, you should close it. If you do not want staff deciding who gets in and who doesn't, and then it ends there.
Okay.
The other common question is, if locals can bring guests from out of town, this is a statement, this defeats the purpose. There effectively won't be a locals only day.
Okay. So I feel like we need to separate the vote. So I guess, because what I'm getting an impression of is that maybe the amendments that were suggested by Chris, maybe we're on the same page with, but this one about limiting the residents, there might be different opinions. So how do we do that, Chris? How do I bifurcate those?
Well, we had, so now that we've had motions to put those items before the body, I think now what I would suggest is make a second motion on that would be which ones you want to approve. So if the 2 non-substantive ones that I suggested, you could do in one motion and then come back and then have a motion second on the proposal for the limitation on village residents.
That makes sense to me too. Okay. So, so first of all, we have a motion to add ODH in the first whereas, and to add a 5th whereas, and Judy can correct me if my number is wrong, to allow for essentially some flexibility and latitude. Judy, do you have that language in front of you to read, or? Okay, or Chris, you can articulate it again.
Yeah, Chris has got the language.
Yes, the village manager is further authorized to implement and modify pool rules and policies as needed based upon guidance and recommendations of the governor and the Ohio Director of Health.
Okay, so we've already had a motion and a second, so now we're going to vote on this in terms of the ordinance. So Judy, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then we have a second motion that's already been seconded, which is, Laura, do you want to articulate it again?
That on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, that the pool be open to residents of the Village of Yellow Springs only, subject to that policy of that the manager is going to articulate related to the guests.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so that's been motioned and seconded. Judy, let's do a roll call again.
Okay, and this is on,
Oh, we lost you.
sorry, this is on Laura's motion. McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I know that both of these topics have added time to our meeting, but you know, again, I think that these are really important issues for us to figure out now. Again, we read this as an emergency so that we can stay on some kind of timeline to open the pool as soon as is reasonable and safe. So thanks everyone for the great discussion, and we're going to move into old business.
Oh, we actually need to vote on the ordinance itself.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, you're right. So, Judy, let's call the roll on the amended ordinance.
All right, Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so we are into old business, and our first topic is an update about our response to the needs of local businesses. And so some of you may remember at our May 4th meeting, we had a lot of different ideas that came up that we needed to sort of follow up on and think about. A few decisions were made at that meeting, but I wanted to update on a few items and then talk about future possibilities briefly. So we have heard four main things from local businesses over the last couple weeks about their needs. I was really happy that essentially within a week, we were able to respond to a lot of these, either as a village or the Community Foundation or the Development Corporation, and all of these entities are working closely together. So one thing we heard is that we don't need loans, we need grants. And so as Lisa will talk a little bit more about, after our last meeting, the Development Corporation decided that the initiation of the the revolving loan program would be $30,000 that would be given for forgivable loans to address some of those immediate needs. Now, I think one thing of note is 30,000 might not seem like a lot when you compare it to Dayton and their 500,000. A big chunk of that, which was a donation from a private organization. But I will say, if you do the math per capita, our fund is over twice as much as Dayton's. Now, that being said, we want to continue to have additions to that fund and make sure that we can continue to support our local businesses. But 30,000 is a significant amount of money when you compare the size of Yellow Springs to some of these cities and counties that are doing things that are beyond our capacity. The second thing we heard was that it would be great if the village could support bulk buying with things like sanitizer. And you saw that the village immediately responded to that, and the village team was able to get a lot of sanitizer out there to our local businesses. And at this point, we are offering that without any cost to those local businesses. We've talked about that we have funds in our lodging tax that we think can support that, but we hope that we get compensated by FEMA or the CARES Act. Third thing we heard is that business consulting would be helpful, especially to measure the health of your business. And the Community Foundation was able to secure a couple great speakers immediately. You can find the recording of that session online, and they provided some important tools that local businesses can use to help make decisions during this crisis time. And the fourth thing we heard is that if the grant writer, which the village has budgeted for, could support some looking at funds for local business grants, that would be great. I believe that Josue will talk a little bit about his thoughts in his manager's report about that, but we've indicated some openness to some of that time helping with looking for those funds. So all that being said, if you look at the 107,000 that we started this year with our Economic Development Fund, we are actively investing those funds in different ways through Development Corporation and through other approaches to support our local businesses, because we understand that they are a huge component of the healthy, thriving community that we have in Yellow Springs, and we want to do everything to maintain a vibrant downtown. So, Lisa, if you want to hop in on the forgivable loan program.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for that really good summary. I really want to reinforce how critically important it is to me, and I think to all of us, that we do all that we can to preserve our downtown, which is really the heart of the village. Right now, there are 3 active programs that are for business support. 2 of them are administered through the Development Corporation, and 1 is through the Community Foundation. The one that's through the Community Foundation is a collateralized loan program. And if you're interested in that, you would contact the Community Foundation. Then the 2 Development Corporation funds, one is called the Yellow Springs Development Corporation Business Emergency Relief Fund. And we are counting on angels, on donors from the community. We are all in this together. We have to pull together, and we're fortunate that we're at about $8,000 in donations to that fund, of which around $7,000 remain to be distributed. About $1,000 has been spent on first responder supplies, masks, personal protective equipment, sanitizer, and that sort of thing. So those are grants, not loans. And then, as Brian mentioned, the Development Corporation Forgivable Revolving Loan Fund, and the application period for the first round of those revolving loans has closed, and the packages are being prepared for review. We have 21 entities that have applied. The maximum amount is $2,500, and we have promised to provide decisions by the end of the month. So, we know that it's never enough during these times of crisis, but I'm really proud of the cross-entity collaboration and rapid response that we're seeing from so many of the involved stakeholders, and the village, the Development Corporation, and the Community Foundation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. And, I just did the math. That means if we do get 12 viable requests at $2,500 each, that would be the 30,000. So again, we want to keep emphasizing that the Forgivable Loans Revolving Fund is something that folks can also donate to support our local businesses. So we hope to have a round 2, a round 3, whatever we need. So there's one other, discussion that we've had in several groups, and we said we would talk about this a little bit amongst council as well, and that is to try to get support outside of our local environment. I think one of the things that's great about municipalities and also local organizations is that we can be relatively nimble and have that rapid response that Lisa referenced. But what we also know is that there are bigger pots of money at the county and state level. I will say that my discussions with state and county government have indicated that they do not have an appetite to do what other counties have done. We've counted at least a dozen counties, probably more in Ohio, that have started forgivable loan or grant programs, and they've come up with creative ways to fund those. We have suggested that the sales tax revenue that the county gets, which supports a large chunk of its budget, it would make sense for them to invest in businesses to preserve those revenues. The other big idea that's come up, or idea that I think is worth considering, is like about 10 other counties have done, is get a delay on the payment of real estate taxes. And that is currently extended from July 20th to August 20th. Or it varies a little bit by county, but let's say July 15th-ish to August. So again, there's been some outreach with the county, the auditor, the treasurer, and commissioners. And again, there doesn't seem to be much interest in doing that. So the question is, does the village formally write a letter requesting those? And or do we reach out to the other municipalities in Greene County to try to sort of all come together and sign on to some really straightforward requests? So I guess I want to gauge thoughts, interest around that, keeping in mind that, we've already heard sort of a lack of interest from the county and the state, and also it may be a bit of a lift to try to get the other municipalities on board. So a third option could be, besides do nothing or get everyone on board, is for Yellow Springs to make the case on behalf of the county. So any thoughts?
Brian, do you know of any other municipalities, I'm thinking Fairborn, Beaver Creek in particular, who have expressed an interest in going to the county? Do you know anything at all?
I have not heard much on that front. I've had a few conversations and certainly some interest, but I have not, or we haven't gone about asking for any commitments or anything like that. So, Josue, have you heard anything?
No, I have not. I know that Fairborn has had major financial impact. So I know a deferred real estate payments would add to what their current struggles are. I think you mentioned this, that Montgomery County did pass this, so they've delayed the real estate tax payments.
Right.
I know it's got momentum in the state and around the country.
Yeah, and I guess related to that, other things underneath that are waiving late fees and, doing something like that. So.
Right, and I think one of the things to mention here, Brian, is that a deferment or delay in the payments doesn't mean all the payments get deferred and delayed. There are a lot of folks that will still make their payments on time. So that's an important thing to note. If I may weigh in on our position, I think for us, if payments are delayed or deferred within the calendar year, that's something that we can absorb and we can adjust. But we're not the first one in the pecking order of real estate payments. We're third one in the list. So it may have less of an impact on us as it would the other taxing agencies that collect real estate taxes from the same residents.
Right. and I think I'll just add to that. Thanks, Josue, that, from the discussions, I talked to one of the Montgomery County commissioners, and, the indication was that they looked at, the impacts, and they are talking about, just a month extension, essentially. But one of the things that has been shared via Karen Wintro from the chamber is that the real estate taxes are something that many of our local business owners have mentioned as being something that they have to, save money now for, essentially, for that payment. Okay.
And one more thing I would add to that, Brian, that this is the season when a lot of our businesses are just kicking off businesses, and they're doing well because of the weather. So some of those folks that might have not saved up, this is the time where they're collecting it.
Yep. Did I hear someone else start to make a comment?
I'd like to make a comment, Brian. I would support that we at least write a letter asking the commissioners to waive any late fees, and because those can be substantial, at least for 1 month. If people pay by August 20th, that there isn't a late fee, because I believe the late fee is like 5% of what you owe if you pay it in the first 5 days, and then 10% if it's after. It's pretty substantial.
Okay. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, I would, the question was asked, Mary Ann asked, if we've either heard of other municipalities within the county considering the same type of action. But I also wonder if we could encourage some of those other municipalities to make the same ask that we will be making, so that I don't think the county would just hear from Yellow Springs, but I'd like to ensure that the county hears from other folks besides just Yellow Springs, so they can get the impression that it's more of a countywide concern, not just more of a local one from our perspective.
I have an answer for Laura's question on the late fees. Taxes paid 10 days or more late typically incur a 10% fee charge.
Right. And I saw that someone asked the question, who was that, Philip? Matthew Kirk, about whether there have been calculations done on average losses for businesses. There actually have been some estimates done. Lisa Abel shared some sort of back of the napkin. I don't have those figures in front of me, but I'm happy to share those with you later, Matthew. Okay, any other thoughts about, I guess, advocacy on the county or state level?
Well, Brian, as I recall, you said that the county has a substantial rainy day fund. I guess that's what they call it. It's just sitting there. And I would definitely support us writing a letter listing that as a potential source of income for businesses, as well as the other ideas that people have suggested. And then sending a copy of that letter, I guess, to all the other municipalities, encouraging them to contact the county as well.
Okay. I like that suggestion. Any other thoughts? Lisa? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I think in my mind, I think the ask around a forgivable loan fund like the one that Yellow Springs has set up is something that there's precedent for. Champaign County, which is right, close by where Urbana is, has done this. We modeled ours after theirs in some ways. And I feel like that's, sort of per Mary Ann, what you said. I think that's one straightforward ask that can be simple, direct, and there's a justifiable funding mechanism. The second thing is, I thought that some kind of relief around the real property taxes would be a straightforward ask. Again, as Josue emphasized, Montgomery County has done this. And I think that, we could include some other kind of relief, as well, like, the late payments interest piece. So I've actually got that language drafted. If that seems like something that we're all in agreement to move forward with, then Judy's got the contacts for the municipalities. And I would say, rather than delay a letter and get everybody signed on, that I like Laura's idea that we just kind of move forward and go ahead and send it, and hope that other municipalities jump on as well. All right. Any other thoughts? Okay. Yeah.
I want to bring up something. It's about supporting local businesses in downtown. It's not about this. It's about the concern that people have of particularly people coming into town not wearing masks, and particularly young people. And I don't know if that's appropriate here or whether it's under roadmap for reopening.
Let's talk about that under roadmap.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that is an important thing that we're probably going to discuss for several meetings. Anything else? I do want to wrap up with one other thing then, which is another aspect that's been shared by local businesses is they would also love to hear from village leadership. So council members, village manager, and that's other leaders as well. And they indicated that it'd be great to hear from us about that we have their back. We understand the value of our local businesses, and so I would encourage everyone to continue to reach out to our local business owners and get a sense for what they're going through and what their needs are. And I know I think all council members are already doing that, but I wanted to again emphasize that was something else that we've heard. Okay, so get that letter out. I will make sure that Judy shares that draft with everyone, and we'll see if we can get some traction. Next up, we are going to talk about village finances. So Josue, I think you're kicking this off.
Yes, this is me, Brian. Thank you. This is one of those situations where no news is good news. In your packet, you will find a letter from the RITA, which is the Regional Income Tax Agency, indicating their position on the model that they presented to us a couple weeks ago. So in that letter, they stated that they did not have new information to update us on. We were expecting information last week on the actual data that was collected, the actual payments that were collected, and that would give us a signal whether the projections that their initial model was on point or how far off they would be. We don't have that information, so we don't have any new information to provide on the model. When that information becomes available, we'll update our calculations and make any budget adjustments as necessary. For the time being, all the new information that we have is that they are seeing a drop in collections is more on the individual and net profits accounts, and they're recalculating the projected losses and net profits based on that information. So we hope to have new information by the June 1st meeting. I am available to do a recap of what we've cut if it would be beneficial to the group.
If you want to maybe just quick highlights, that sounds good.
Okay, certainly. Bring it up on my screen. So as reported in the last council meeting, we're looking at a reduction in property taxes to the tune of $66,500. Income tax, $180,000. Lodging tax, we expect a revenue loss of $22,000. This was estimated by Colleen on collections and projected activities. We haven't seen an uptick in lodging taxes or reservations, and that's still up in the air with some of the restrictions and provisions on Airbnbs. Local government, we see a reduction of 40,000. Rollback and homestead deductions, 9,500. So that brings us to a preliminary revenue loss of 350,000, and we've cut our budget accordingly to meet that number. So we reduced by $351,245. Any thoughts, concerns, questions?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for that update. And if there are no questions, let's go ahead and move to roadmap. And so, Josue, I will leave that to you as well.
Okay. Do you mind if I share my screen on this one? Okay. All right, you should see my screen. Please confirm that you do. All right, roadmap to reopening. These are the guiding principles of our local strategy on how do we structure our strategy and tactics around reopening. They're built on the general guidelines from Governor DeWine. That informs the Yellow Spring strategy. And then there is the orders and timeline, which dictates the business activities. And then how do we manage our local resources? That's government facilities and resources. Some of these things are mentioned by Brian, which are what are the things that we're doing to support our local businesses and local activities. Beginning on the general guidelines, these are the guidelines provided by the administration, Governor DeWine's administration, and they fall under three general categories. And that's how do we protect the health of employees, customers, and their families, supporting community efforts to control the spread of virus, and doing anything that we do is done in a responsible manner. So very general guidelines requiring face coverings for employees and customers, conducting daily health assessment by employers and employee. These are self-evaluations. We've done that within our organization, and we have a sheet that our employees sign that they've done their health assessments and that they're okay, they're fit for duty. Maintaining good hygiene at all times, encouraging the hand washing, sanitizing of all high touch areas and the physical distancing, and limiting capacity to meet social distancing guidelines. All right, so our strategy has been support local business activities. We've done this through partnerships. Some have included the Chamber, Community Foundation, and the Fire Department. We've engaged in marketing campaigns. There's a great social media report by Philip in the packet, and I'll discuss that in my manager's report. And we'll also provide resources. These are the hand sanitizer stations in the downtown area and the distribution of hand sanitizers that we've done for our businesses. We also done work to minimize social gathering opportunities. This is done through the management of facilities and the public assets. That's the restrooms, limiting the parking assets so that we have less opportunities for people to congregate and gather in one central place. This also includes the campaigns that are digital signs that are on the three main entrances of our village. And we've aligned our strategy and tactics with the general guidelines. That's been on both the tactics themselves and the marketing that we've done through all of our social media or traditional media interviews, and the material that we've distributed and collaborated with the various partners that we'll work with. Any questions on our strategy? Okay, moving on to the timeline. This is the timeline of the reopening of businesses by order of DeWine. You already know that the May 12th, hair salons, barbershops, that the consumer, this is made an update that didn't reflect here, but May 12th, consumer retail and services was allowed to open. May 15th, the hair salon, barbershops, and other services, including restaurants outdoors, were allowed to open. May 21st, we will see the indoor restaurants and bar services and campgrounds open. Horse racing will open on May 12th, no spectators. May 26th, gyms, fitness centers, and non-contact or limited contact sports and pools. And in May 31st, childcare facilities including day camps, are also allowed to open. So all that we do, it's going to be supportive of the general business activities that are allowed to happen, but also minimizing the social gathering opportunities that exist. So what does that look like at the local, within the Yellow Springs? Parking lots, John Bryan Center opened May 4th. Partial lot will be opening the rest of the May 18th. We've opened Corey Street and on the 12th, and Railroad Street has opened. On Parks and Recreation, park and fields have remained open. No organized sports are allowed, but those facilities were open and they remained open. Basketball and playground courts remain closed. Playgrounds remain closed. The skate park is open, and the pool, we're initially looking to reopen June 1st. We're changing this date to June 5th because as we work through our checklist today of the requirements we need to meet to ensure the safe opening, there are a lot of tasks such as making your filtering, running the pumps, and getting all the personnel trained. We are unable to get all of that done until June 5th. So for the safety of our employees and our customers, we will be opening on June 5th. The John Bryan Center is open for police services. Businesses are allowed, including council, commission, and court meetings. We are currently experiencing an issue with the fire panel, so we first need to resolve this fire panel issue before we open fully for the public and other activities. The gym and youth center will remain closed. We're working through how to safely open these resources. The youth center provides a multitude of services. One of them is an activity that remains explicitly closed, and that is game rooms because of the nature of high-touch areas. While day camps are allowed to open, our youth center does act as a day camp center facility, but it's more than that, and there's still a concern about exposure to customers. So that will remain closed until we have updated guidelines on how we can open that safely. What is support for local businesses? That's the occupancy layouts, the hand sanitizer stations downtown. We have placed an order for additional dispensers. So Johnny and his team will be working on setting up those stations and distributing that where it makes sense. As you know, these dispensers are battery operated, so they cannot be exposed to the elements for fear of the electrical components being damaged. But we will make more dispensing stations available. We will also continue our marketing campaign for mask and physical distancing. In addition to the digital signs that will remain in place, we're also putting up additional posters and signs that the chamber and Brian and others have worked diligently to develop a strategy that would help organically encourage the use of masks. Obviously, mask is something that council could tackle on more directly, but for the obvious reasons, there's challenge there and enforcing a mandate for mask wearing out in public and the businesses. Pool reopening proposal. You've heard me speak about this earlier. We're proposing to open June 1st through August 23rd, or when school resumes. The reason we want to leave that date open is that the pool attendance drops significantly after students return to school. So we're proposing that August 23rd. If for whatever reason school is not back in session, then we would extend the pool opening to September to Labor Day. Someone asked me earlier, well, why not keep it through October? Last year was hot, and then it followed a second word to that. It was really hot last year. We can't control the weather. So we could have a 70-day weather in October, like we had a 70-degree weather in February, but we can't count on that. So Labor Day may be the latest day that we could go. Opening hours will be 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. with lap swim hour at 11 a.m. To 12 p.m. And we will update our proposal with the spirit of the ordinance passed by council to reflect the residents only hours. No annual pass, new fee structure. So we're proposing $3 for for children, $5 for adult. Thank you for passing that ordinance and allowing us the flexibility to adopt the business model to the times. And that is the update on reopening Yellow Springs.
All right, thank you, Josue. I'd like to separate masks and follow up on a few other maybe smaller points that you made.
Oh, Brian, I'm sorry, I forgot the bathroom update.
Yeah, that was my first question. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We don't have the thumbs up or the green light from the public health authorities just yet. Nationally, this is a thorny issue because this is where a high touch areas for a concern of spreading the virus. So we don't have the green light yet from the public health. When we do get that, we would make adjustments as needed to ensure that those facilities are open and available.
Yeah, and I would say, one thing that we've got a heads up about is that some of the guidance that's being finalized, and we'll probably hear this week, has talked about cleaning restrooms 3 times a day, cleaning restrooms every 2 hours. So, I think we have an idea of probably what we're going to see. And so my general comment is I think this is a great sort of where we are to date. And so I think the next thing we should start doing is thinking about as things open, what's going to happen, and start adding that to the list. I know you guys, like you mentioned, for example, that we're expecting maybe 20 additional hand sanitizer stations, or, at least new ones. It'd be good to think about where we're anticipating to place those. And, I think similarly, kind of thinking about what's going to happen when we reopen restrooms. How are we going to get those bathrooms cleaned and that sort of thing? So, I know you guys have been slammed, but this seems kind of like the next step in my mind. So besides masks, are there any other questions or comments? Marianne?
Well, first, thank you to our village team and everyone else that has been working so diligently on all of this kind of stuff that we never expected to have to do. And also thank you for everyone who's worked on the branding. And like Brian, I see you have on the Yellow Springs. What do you call that? A gator or gator? Yeah, there it is. So I've been making some, but I don't have the Yellow Springs. Anyway, what I noticed when I went downtown is that it seemed, I'm assuming it was people from out of town and mostly younger people, who are most of the people who are coming in, who on Saturday, it was rare to see any masks on them. So it seems like Yellow Springs people are wearing masks, and in the stores, the people working there pretty much are wearing masks. What I wanted to suggest, and maybe it is what you're already doing, is to have more signage downtown on the street, or maybe on the crosswalk, somewhere where right downtown you're seeing Yellow Springs, whatever it says, masks and the logo and everything, because they're great. But as long as they're just little posters on the stores where most people are just walking up and down the street, I don't think it's as effective as it could be. And we've done all that work to make such great branding of Yellow Springs and masks. So maybe that is what is being planned. Bigger posters so that it's very visible downtown.
So, I'll just say, Marianne, from my perspective, because I was also downtown most of the afternoon on Saturday, I do think that part of our, roadmap is to also think about where we want to place signage and what kind of signage we need. I know that there's been some, initially there were varying perspectives on masks. I will say that, some people are now kind of pulling back for a variety of reasons about enforcing that. And so I think one decision we have to, or one thing we need to discuss is what are our expectations. So similarly, when I was downtown on Saturday, I noticed, everyone in the shops wearing masks, like the governor has required them to do. For the most part, it seemed that groups that were together were families, or even if they were young people, they probably have a posse and hang out a lot together. But as you said, almost no mask wearing. I saw some people carrying masks. I saw some confusion about whether they should go into shops or not without a mask. But I think one of the things we have to decide is if we are committed as a village that we want people to wear masks when they're around other people. Yeah, I think we need more signage. We need to beef up the messaging, and we need to make that, at least make that attempt. I think we also know that there have been discussions about, do we take a next step and do something that is more legal in terms of requirement. We've discussed many of the challenges that incurs in terms of capacity, potentially escalation and other things, but I think we're going to have to confront that as well. So anyway, I'll stop there. Other comments?
I know that, to Josue's point, that enforcement is tough, but I wonder if we could do a soft enforcement, by trying to make masks available. I know this might be a heavy lift, but maybe at the very least ensuring that all the open shops, have masks, however that happens, so that everyone that wants to come into a shop has a mask. I mean, and once you get a mask at shop number one, then you've got a mask, for the rest of the afternoon. And if folks are just out walking around, maybe we could have, just like we have the hand sanitizer stations, again, a heavy lift, maybe we could have some inexpensive mask distribution. And I'm saying all this just in terms of having a stronger message, that not just that we're hoping that folks would wear masks, whether they're in stores or out of stores, but make it almost impossible for them not to comply with those expectations. So I just wonder where folks' thoughts were in that regard.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Laura, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I think I said at the last meeting, I'm all for mask wearing. I think there's a lot of reasons why the state of Ohio and a lot of businesses don't want to require it for people going in their business. And then there's a host of some health related reasons why some people can't wear them. So I'm really uncomfortable getting into the business of enforcing mask wearing when there's so many reasons why people aren't. I love the idea. I wish we could just have them sitting out available with signage like take one if you need one, The problem is I think they'd all disappear. So then somebody has to hand them out, and who wants that exposure? So it's just a very difficult problem to solve. I think more signage would be great. I believe I saw a sign on the Little Art Theater. Love their sign. We wear masks for you, you wear them for us.
Right. Yeah, and related to that, Josue referenced some of the initiatives that are going on. So there's a group, and it was started by Carol Young, who are creating yard signs, and they're using the Be Kind with the mask symbol. One area I've noticed that we're really lacking signage is on the trail. The other day on Saturday when I walked downtown, the one sign that I saw coming from, the Antioch College neighborhood into town was actually down, and I reposted it. but I think there are some other areas where congregating is happening that we could think about. And I think Josue could probably weigh in on this. The other thing that is has been offered is Dan Young has printed some signs for the village. I'm not sure that we figured out a way to post them, but that is something that we have an opportunity with. And Josue and I have also talked about whether we need to update the banners across 68 on both sides of town, potentially with the Be Kind and a mask. But I think that there are opportunities that we haven't explored yet with signage and messaging. Lisa, did you want to add anything?
No, I agree. I think the idea of changing the banners is great. And I share Laura's perspective that this is a real challenging issue because there are people who, for health reasons, should not be wearing masks. And I just want to acknowledge that I understand local residents feeling like it's not safe for them to go out because of the crowds in town. And I just can only say that it's very complicated. It's a very difficult time. This time will pass. And I do think that we just have to, as much as possible, let other people make their own risk decisions and do all you can to protect yourself. And if there's anybody that feels like they're trapped at home and it's not safe for them to get out, then contact me, contact the senior center, contact your neighbor and ask for help so that you don't feel like you have to put yourself at risk by going out on the weekend when there's crowds in town, and let this period move past us. I know it's difficult.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, Judy?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out two suggestions. One is that perhaps we could assist the places like the Corner Cone with some funding to be able to hand out a coupon for a free cone to people who are wearing masks, just a little positive incentive for that. That seems to be one of the hot spots. But the other one is that if there were more options for distancing that include families. Families do not stand 6 feet apart for 5 members of a family, but when they clump together, they're just on that one little X, and then everyone is shoved in closer to them because the other X's aren't moved further apart. And that's just not contemplated when those X's are placed on a sidewalk. And I think people just don't know how to handle it. I don't think that they're purposely being, rude about the distancing. They just don't know how to handle a group. So I don't know if Colin Altman might have suggestions for signage around that or how to address it, but I think I certainly saw that issue repeatedly downtown, is the groups of folks.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks, Judy. So Josue, any comments you have? And then I guess I want to check to see if we've got any comments from citizens.
Well, we have several comments from citizens.
Okay. That have indicated they want those to be read?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Matthew Kurt, has there been any conversation about opening the Glen? Do you want me to jump on these or just read through them?
Yeah, let's just read through them.
Emily Harvey, share what you're doing with the mass shaming. Sunday, there was a man blocking the sidewalk to prevent people without masks from walking down the sidewalk, meaning people had to walk in the street. Mark Carr, please read to council. 1, why is section of JBC parking lot closed? 2, when will the station restrooms open? Emily Harvey, when will there be a handicap accessible public bathroom? Kate Hamilton. Mayor Whaley just said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Today, DeWine, each community has the ability to do what they need to do to protect their community. This is too soon. Kate Hamilton, we are a high-risk small community. I'm not seeing the safety of citizens being put above all else. Our health and our lives should be the top priority. Summer McGuire, we already discussed this, I thought. The concern was that if we hand mask out, it continues to send the message that we're open and we want tons of people. Kate Hamilton, why do you have to put ourselves at risk in our own town? People still need to stay in their neighborhoods. This is really ridiculous. We should not be encouraging tourism. Matthew, draw a box on the ground instead of an X. Summer McGuire, there needs to be 6-foot markers on sidewalks outside a corner cone. Also, need a better way to keep the Dragon Tree vendors, patrons from blocking sidewalk. Karen Gardner, how do you plan to keep the bathrooms at the pool safe?
Okay, so I think the Glen one's easy. We don't. That's not our call. So you'd have to reach out to Nick Budis or someone at the Glen. I think otherwise, we've kind of talked about. I guess we talked about bathrooms at the pool already.
Right.
Every 2 hours, we're doing an overall clean, and that's why those 2-hour shifts are happening.
Correct.
I think the other issues, I just want to remind folks that, yeah, we have been talking about masks and different people's perspectives on, what should be required, what should be safe. I think the challenge is there is not universal agreement. There's lots of different perspectives on a spectrum, and that's why this is such a difficult issue, as many people have mentioned. Josue, without going point by point, because a lot of this has been discussed before, are there any other highlights you'd like to make related to those comments?
Again, the bathrooms are going to be open when we have the green light from the public health authorities. We've opened the parking lots. There are some sections that are marked off. Those are primarily business spots, but I don't see those affecting the overall availability of parking spots. We do have the basketball courts parking closed. We don't see the volume of vehicles to overflow in that area, but if the conditions change, we'll make that space available.
Okay. Chief Carlson, do you want to weigh in on this?
Certainly. The message that we're trying to provide when we have interactions is, number one, contact us if you see something that's disturbing you, of course. But number 1A, protect yourself, not leaving yourself at the risk of others who may not be acting as safely or in accordance with what you would consider safe. And just keep that in mind. We are having a difficult time for officers randomly to talk to groups of people, or the common denominator or a reply that we get is, we're all family. We do see mostly young people without masks, but I've experienced a little bit of a different view from, my being out in public, that I think it's more 80-20. I'm seeing a lot of people wearing masks, and kind of the opposite of what I've heard some of the discussion about. I think regarding the law enforcement of this angle, which I think Josue and Brian, you've expressed, legally the village can come up with their own ordinances and such. But I think that falls a little bit out of the spirit of what we're trying to do in Yellow Springs, and that is, less policing than more. I think the biggest thing that I will keep emphasizing is to keep yourself safe. It may not be convenient to cross the street and come down the other side, but that's what I would recommend if you feel unsafe. I do know that followed up with all the complaints we've had about the vendors, and I will be working with the one vendor who, lives in Yellow Springs, works in Yellow Springs, has a family, but the placement of that particular booth in front of the senior center is not going to work. Josue told me, we talked this morning with Johnny Burns, and we're going to offer us another space in the village for that vendor to sell their wares.
All right, thanks, Chief Carlson. Okay, so I'm going to summarize what I've heard, and then I'm open to hearing if I'm missing what I understand council to be saying. Okay, so first of all, I think there's definitely consensus around we've got to be more intentional about signage and messaging, and I think to some degree, that we are probably the entity that needs to take more of the lead on that. We've got a lot of great signage, so I think we need to kind of put our heads together on that. I guess, the second thing I've heard is lots of reservations about taking this step of legal requirement of masks. So while I think that there are some concerns that we are very much aware of, I'm not getting the impression that any council member is currently proposing a legal approach. All right. I will say personally, kind of like Governor DeWine, kind of like I think most elected officials these days, our minds are open. We are listening. Things change and evolve very rapidly, and we do need to be responsive if things, I guess, don't improve or if things get worse. But I'm not sure that I'm hearing that we're going to be proposing tonight to pass a law to require masks. Is there any council member that feels differently about that at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing anything there. Judy, were you going to say something or? Okay. So I guess at this point, I'm not sure if there's any other new comments to be made, but this is something that's going to be an ongoing issue. I expect it on June 1st, we're going to need to take stock again and see where we're at. But I think in the interim, there are lots of things in motion. And I do still believe from what I saw that people are not completely clear on what they're supposed to do. I know I hear people say masks have been out there, we all know this and that, but I saw enough behavior and sort of confusion that I think people are still learning about what are the best practices. So any other comments before we move on at this point? Okay, thank you. All right, our next old business item is transitioning to in-person meetings. My name is attached to this. I think the way that this should go is that Josue, you should update us on what you guys have figured out to do this, and then we can make a decision about whether we're ready for June 1st.
For our piece to figure out, there's two aspects to it. One is accommodating the physical space for the number of people that we anticipate, primarily the council members and others that may want to join in person. The most suitable space would be the gym. And I think we should only be considering the gym, not just for access, but also ability to spread out. From the technology perspective, we've made some purchases to help run a smoother meeting. That's around microphone and video cameras. We've made those investments and we are ready to broadcast from the gym. Now you may be wondering, how is this different? We were able to do that earlier. And that's true, it just required such a heavier lift. We had to pay for additional technician time, and it was just not something that we could easily ramp up. But now it is. Now we would switch to video screens that are, video cameras that run over the internet feed, and we can stream the audio and video back to the station for redistribution. So from the technology end, without going into details, unless you want to know the type of mic and frequencies, I'm happy Sean would entertain us with all the tech things involved. But that's the two.
Sean would love that. So time.
So I think that we're ready. I want to manage expectations. You know, this is new for a lot of us. This is a new way of doing business, just like these Zoom meetings where we had to do a hybrid, and you know, we dealt with some challenges. I think that the first one's not going to go as smooth as some of these Zoom meetings can now go. But it will help us go much further, much smoother if we don't have the hybrid model that we were proposing. So it's in person and not a hybrid where people are joining various different platforms. So given those concerns, we are also doing additional technology improvements on our end. So in the near future, we will be able to broadcast not just to YouTube, but Facebook Live directly. So we would be much more accessible than we have been in the past.
Okay. Thanks, Josue. Okay. And so I guess, well, one other question I have, and then if others have questions, and in terms of concerns for our village team members, how do you guys feel about that?
They're still concerned, Brian. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Folks here, they're concerned not just for their safety, but for safety of their families. They don't want to take something home. So they want to be cautious. I feel honored and privileged to have such a devoted team that if we say we're going to deliver something, they're going to be there, but and provide the best service to the residents and to the council members. But I'm not going to neglect or downplay the concern that they have. With each day as it passes, we learn of something new. You know, we learned that New York City had 100 children who were experiencing inflammation on the joints. They weren't sick, they just had these symptoms that were related to COVID. So there are things that we don't know that we're learning as time goes. And so there's still some level of uncertainty and concern, and rightly so, from our folks. So they're committed, they're going to deliver because it's what they do. I'm impressed with their commitment and the work that they do for us every day. But I would not minimize the concern that's shared amongst the team.
All right, thanks for that, Josue. One other thing I want to mention is that, you know, we have had this, you know, I guess kind of standard that all of the key participants in a meeting should be comfortable to come to a live meeting. Otherwise, we should continue making it virtual. And we've kind of put that out there for council and commission meetings. So with that, questions or comments from council members? Where are you at with this? Lisa?
I've thought a lot about a comment that Stokes made at the last time we talked about this, about how economic drivers have been the motivation for some entities to open up in this state and others. But he questioned if there was an economic driver or motivation for us to go back to in-person meetings. And so while I have been inclined to feel like we could have safe in-person meetings, hearing that people have safety concerns and understanding that although, I mean, this is fairly painful to meet like this, it's also safe. And so I'm not compelled to rush back, even though my back hurts right now. I'm not compelled to rush back to in-person meetings until we can be certain that we're safe. I do wish we all could be together.
Thanks, Lisa. Mary Ann McQueen?
I don't have an opinion. I won't push one way or another. I will go with what most people want to do.
Okay. Laura Curlis?
Yes, thank you. I was much more concerned about trying to figure out how to do in-person meetings before House Bill 197, because the Attorney General's opinion was really limiting our agenda and our business. And if this was going to be long-term, that seemed not to be workable to me either. But now that we can have a full agenda, even though I agree with Lisa, you lose so much. And also everybody's just going to have to put up when my dog jumps on my lap, and gets in the picture, or other disturbances you might have at home. So if everybody tolerates that, that's probably preferable to people feeling like they're being endangered. So I'd be happy to move on this way.
All right, thanks, Laura. Kevin?
Well, certainly, I've been referred to already, so I think some of my concerns are out there. So yeah, safety for the staff, the effort that's required for village staff to set up and tear down, everything that would require a safe meeting, and just think about all the protocols, the physical safety of everybody involved, the testing and verification, all those steps are much more of a pain than I think we need to go through at this point. It's still, in terms of all the state requirements for opening up all businesses, no state has done a good job, of meeting all those requirements. And, I was going to send an email earlier to ask about the participation numbers. I know we've talked about it in various venues. And I mentioned that jokingly at the beginning of our meeting here virtually, that we tend to have a higher number of participants involved with the virtual meetings than we would have sitting in council chambers, I think, on an average basis. So in short, I'm with staying virtual until there is some overwhelming reason to suggest that we change.
Okay, well, I think at this point, it's pretty clear that June 1st is going to be a virtual meeting, and we will continue to reassess.
Brian, we have some comments on Facebook that's worth noting here. This provides support for Kevin's statement on participation.
Okay.
Matthew Kurt, I personally prefer this model as it allows me to participate. Emily Harvey, I agree with Matthew. This makes it a lot easier for our family as well. Thank you.
Okay.
There's a previous message from Megan Bachman asking for a clarification. Is the message still mask on, or is it now be kind?
I think from the chamber and business community's perspective, they wanted to focus on the positive. And that's also what Carol Young and that group is advocating. There was some feeling that mask on was too in your face for, I guess, a little being punny, but basically that's where I think chamber of business community has gone. I'm not sure as a village that we've made a decision about what our messaging is. So, but I like Be Kind and a mask myself. Okay, any other comments? Okay, so we'll have this on the agenda again on June 1st, and we'll continue to reassess. Our last item of old business is the rec report. Josue, you want to sort of briefly run us through that?
Yes, thank you, Brian. I prepared a long presentation that I'll happily shorten here. Oh, hold on, I need to share my screen first. Some good news. I'm sure you all want good news, right? Okay, on the sale of Rex, we're happy to report that we've executed on the sale of Rex. Here's the overview. We were able to sell our Rex before the COVID-19 had a major impact on the markets. What does that mean cash-wise? Net proceeds of our Rex was $497,020.95. We sold all of our 60,359 Rex of various years for a total of $523,420.95. And we purchased 30,000 Rex. These are 2020 green E-Rex. They're good for 5 years at 80 and 88 cents each for a total of $26,400. Here's an overview of transactions. You'll see that we were able to sell our Rex from $8.15, our lowest price Rec, and this was a hydro from 2016 that we were close to losing because these are only good for 5 years. So we're able to sell those at 815, and our most recent RECs, the 2019 hydros for 926, and the Switch Energy from Brown County for 975. And we purchased the 30,000 at 88 cents. What is a green e-REC? I've included documentation on the certification of these green e-energy certified products. They are certified and verified by Green e-Energy. I've included the contract for these purchases, so they are green. Any questions on these so far? Excellent. Just to review on what is the significance of having a 30,000 REC in our portfolio. This is the power consumption for 2019. We've used 38,000 megawatt hours of energy. This was an increase of 2.5% from 2018, and a 5.5% from our 2019 forecasted projection made in October of 2018. So 30,000, that's the vast majority of we consume, and we expect to add an additional 13 to 15,000 credits in 2020 as our projects, our investment in hydro projects and brownfield yield additional RECs. So by the end of the year, we expect a little over 40,000 RECs in our portfolio. All right, what do we do with the money? Keep in mind, we made some initial proposals at the beginning of this process. We want to invest in our electric infrastructure. We're still waiting on the pending engineering report that we estimate are going to have several recommendations or key electric infrastructure upgrades that we'll need to make. We also want to fund new solar production, fund energy saving initiatives such as rebates and incentives, and make a contribution to fund the utility Roundup 2.0 and version of energy audits, weatherizations, and homeowners. This is the next evolutionary step of our utility Roundup program. It's a great service that we provide in terms of providing immediate relief for residents, but I think we also need to address the root causes of some of these energy efficiency challenges, and we're planning to do that through energy audits and recommendations for weatherization and improvements to homeowners. Any questions?
Yeah, so Josue, I just wanted to clarify, like the last item that you just talked about being in gray doesn't mean that, I mean, these are all four things that we want to focus on, right?
Correct. The coloring doesn't indicate a priority or whatnot. I think the order in which these are laid out, if you're reading from left to right, highlight more of the priority and the areas where we can make long-term investments. So, for example, you look at the first two items, that being investing in electric infrastructure and new solar production. These are long-term investment strategies to improve the grid and improve our green energy production. We've seen reports that green solar production is outpacing coal. Coal has traditionally been the cheapest form of production. We see the trend for solar outperforming coal is a solid investment. I think it'll be a solid investment for the village to build additional production capacity, not just for the production side, but also the localized energy distribution. So we think those are sound long-term investment strategy. The last two, the funding energy saving initiatives, these are great external customer saving initiatives. We in the past have participated in rebates and incentives program. There were some issues on the return on the investment that we were making, that it was not up to the expectations, and the village had committed to revisiting an incentive program, and it just hasn't gotten around to it. Our administration certainly wants to look at this again and see how we can continue to create value for residents, reduce our carbon footprint, and just improve the efficiency of our assets, of our homes in our community. The utility roundup, you hear us talk about every year, and I've included a report on the utility roundup program. As we were speaking earlier today about pay to stay and other relief funds, the utility roundup program is going to become an essential activity in how we manage the stressors of COVID-19 and the financial impact.
Thanks, Josue. Yeah, I also think if we could figure out, you know, a great solution for this energy audit weatherization piece, that could also be a way to, you know, help respond directly to the COVID-19 impacts. So
Right.
it's great.
Right, and early in the year when we were looking at the, we applied for the Community Foundation Miller Fellows Program, and our proposal included the development of the Utility Rana program. There were some challenges with the program. We were not able to secure the person we wanted to, but our intentions and motivations to do the energy audits remain. So we'll continue to look at ways of making that become a reality.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else, Josue?
That's it on the recs.
Great. Any other questions for Josue? All right, awesome. Yeah, I am so glad that we went down that path to look at, you know, what we could get with those renewable energy credits. So thanks for all the great work on that.
Thank you, and I appreciate the timing of you guys jumping on board. You know, we did this in February and March, all of this hit.
All right. Okay, so we're going to move into new business, and I think we will be able to wrap up the meeting soon. Nominations. I know Laura, you had one or two for Planning Commission. Is that?
Yes. I have to nominate for the regular slots Dino Pilata and Stephen Green, and for the alternates Sarah Sinclair Almond and Susan Stiles.
Okay. Do you want to just, because it is kind of our protocol, briefly mention something about each person?
Oh, well, Dino's served as an alternate on Planning Commission for a while now, and he's willing to take one of the regular slots. Susan Stiles is finishing up her 5-year term, and so moving her to an alternate gives somebody else a chance to serve. We had Stephen Green, who has an engineering background, came forward, and he would like to be in a full-time slot. Probably the candidate with the strongest on-point resume, Ms. Sinclair Almond, she wanted to be an alternate, but she has a terrific background in planning, and we welcome, they all bring their own strengths, so we welcome them all if council will bring them on to Planning Commission. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Laura. So are you making a motion then?
Yes, I make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Judy, quick roll call, please.
McQueen,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Couch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and Kevin, did we have a HRC?
I'm gonna probably consider that for next meeting.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna make a suggestion since we are way over time, but we tackled two important items that got us there. Okay, the next topic is addressing the landlord accountability related to, sort of how that has potentially become an issue with some of the things that the village has done related to our waiving of fees and our collections on utilities. So I think this is an important topic to address. My initial thought is that if the village is taking action that has changed the status quo of why we passed that legislation, then we should address that, and we will address that. I guess, Josue, if we can maybe just kind of have some high points here, but I feel like this is something that we can also dig into more on June 1st.
Yeah, I would just like to say that we will almost have been meeting for 4 hours now. And as you say, this is a really important and I think very complex topic. And I think we should put it to the next meeting. I just don't think it makes sense to really talk about it now. It's too much of a discussion, I think.
Yes.
Brian, what I can do is, I think my manager's report speaks for itself, and I can just highlight the things that perhaps you should think about for your next discussion.
Okay.
And very high level, you just let that seep in. So I'll jump in there for just to give you that background information.
Okay.
And so, all right, on the impact area, I just want to show you a couple slides here that I think are relevant to the conversation. This information, the impact that we've had, but I want us to look at the 30 to 60 days age receivable, because one of the questions were, well, what's the impact on landlords? We're taking a policy decision. What is the impact on those? How are we burdening? What's the burden that we're putting on the landlords? So here it is. Of the bills that are 30 to 60 days overdue and will be eligible for disconnects if we had not suspended those disconnect orders, as of last Friday when we put this together, owners own 48% of those overdue bills by amount. In number of units, they represented 24% of the units, for an average of $798. So about 50% of what's owed by amount is owners. Of the tenants, and we have 3 different categories of tenants. We can spell these out, but we wanted to put them in terms that were not as descriptive because we didn't want to identify any specific tenants. Tenants of type A, these are unassociated customers with each other. They're just generic tenants. These are 22 customers. They owe about 23% of the outstanding balances on an amount basis. On a percentage basis, they are 33% of the amount by number of units. Type B tenants, they're associated with one entity. They owe about 16% of the total amount by amount, and 29% of the totals by number of units. Type C tenants, these are associated with one particular entity. They owe 13% of the amount by amount, and 14% by number of units. So what does that mean in terms of the overall picture? 48% of the overdue balances are from owner-occupied customers. 52% are from tenant-occupied customers on a dollar basis. Those numbers seem to be well in line, but when you look at the actual dollar amounts, the percentage, when you look at the actual dollar amounts in terms of the financial burden, it's pretty much evenly split between homeowners and tenant-occupied units. But the number of units, when you compare that balance, it shifts dramatically. And that's because the tenants, on average, have a lower average per unit expense or outstanding balance versus the homeowners. So that's that information. I want you to have the numbers as we have them on what's that burden.
Okay, thanks, Josue. Yeah, I think we will be able to figure out a way to balance these concerns. And so we will talk about that on June 1st, but it is definitely something that we will discuss and figure out a fair approach. Okay, Lisa has had a topic on the agenda. Lisa, what do you want to do with that?
I'd like to push it to a future meeting.
Okay, all right. We will do that. And so Josue, if you want to, I guess, really prioritize any other highlights from your manager's report. I know we've covered a lot of that in the context of the meeting.
Mm-hmm. We have, and the report's included. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will do some highlights. The project regarding the Vernay cleanup, that's back. We resumed that. The EPA is reviewing our well information. We found reports that we needed going back into the 1990s. So they're reviewing that to make a determination on the risk and the exposure to contaminants a water source. So that's in the works. I'm happy that we've picked that up. I just want to make references that the planning and zoning report are included, the police activity report and the community outreach report are included. The financial reports, that's the monthly financial report, is included. The utility roundup report is included. I mentioned earlier that we have a problem with our fire panel being non-operational, and that's causing delay at opening our building to the public. We hope to have that resolved soon. We've presented on and submitted a proposal to ODOT worth $1.6 million. That's to implement the active transportation initiatives. The presentation is attached. This project or this funding application does not have a match requirement. So if we are awarded the 1.6 million, it will be towards 100% of the project. That presentation is included. The Safe Routes to School project, we've shifted the timeline of our project to 2021 for cash management purposes. We wanted to spend for our activities in 2021 so that we don't incur any additional expenses in 2020. So I'm available if you have any questions on that. Mention the partnerships, the senior graduating class posters, those are up. We've gotten great feedback on being able to honor the seniors in this way. So that's being done. We've also submitted a proposal to AARP. This was with Tony and Macy from the tree committee. They did a fabulous job at putting together the concept for this proposal to improve Betty Hughes Park. So that's done. There you go, 3 minutes.
Nice job, Josue. I thought that presentation that you shared about our active transportation improvements was excellent. Good job on that. And I really like all the information that you supplied us with. So much appreciated. You did mention a reference to sort of like the mock-up or plan for Beatty Hughes, but I didn't see it in the packet.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't get that through. I don't know what happened. I'm happy to bring that up.
Yeah, I think it could.
I'll forward that email to you.
Sounds good. And it could be in the next packet too.
Right.
Okay, any other questions before we wrap it up? Okay, all right, so future agenda items. Obviously, we've got a lot of things that roll over. Anything else that anyone wants to throw out there?
I have a request. I want to bring the sewer relining project on the June 1st. There's 2 activities to this. I'm requesting council for authorization to join a group purchasing agreement with the state to procure sewer relining services through a state-sponsored program. And then we will be also coming forward with a proposal requesting over $100,000 towards relining expenses. These were already in the budget, or we already had budgeted relining expenses.
Josue, is that a resolution that you'll need?
Yes, we'll need resolutions on 2 items.
Okay, anything else?
I had, just so that you have a heads up, I've got the levy resolution of necessity up for you. And then we've got 2020-07 coming to you for a first read regarding pay and stay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Then without further delay, motion to adjourn. Lisa's ready. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, thanks everyone. Great work.
Aye.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Night.
Bye.
Bye,
Night.
everybody. Bye, Marcia.
Night.
Good night, John Boyd.
All right, you hang up first.